Cowan, who is on technical duty, as well as our secretary treasurer, and Peter Venton, who's our very active member at large. So I'd like to acknowledge that we're meeting on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, Mississauga of the Credit, and other First Nations peoples. So with that, I will ask the rest of you to introduce yourselves as well. John, you have introduced yourself. Patricia.
Oh, I'm Patricia Phillip, and I've been very involved with the Montreal branch for quite a number of years, and I'm also on the executive committee and on the board of directors and a couple of other things.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
Yeah, I'm Doug Anderson. I'm a senior citizen. I've been many years involved with the United Nations, etc., but only briefly with the World Federalist. I live in Whitby, Ontario, which is near Toronto. Anyway, there you go.
Thank you. And Brian Goombay. I haven't seen your name in a while. Welcome.
She's
I
muted.
think you're muted. Well, perhaps we'll go on to Anne. Well, Bryden gets herself unmuted. Anne, although you're listed as Peter, you are?
You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. I am Ann Denton. I have come to these meetings from time to time, and I had heard this one was going to be especially interesting with the video. So I am here.
Thank
waiting
you.
to partake.
Okay. Still no luck, Bryden? No. Blair Eugene O'Rourke. Orky, have I pronounced your name right? You're also, I think, on mute.
He's muted too.
It's not a mute. There's a microphone problem, Blair. Yes.
Okay. In the video that you're now about to see, Oded Gillard explains, he's the narrator, he explains in detail why love and brotherhood are not realistic and so not very helpful. What we really need, he says, is a framework of the democratic state that is also applied at the global level, that is, global governance, so that all the parts of our global society are effectively covered. So they're going to play the video now. There will be a discussion after the video, but you can put comments in the chat at any time during the video or the discussion that happens after the video. So John, I'll turn that over to you.
When I speak to people about the vision of a global democracy, they often associate it with John Lennon's song Imagine, that also describes a world of unity and peace. But while surely I like that song and its message, some important distinctions need to be made. In the song, Lennon takes what are arguably the major things that people have been fighting over throughout history, countries, religions, and private property, and invites us to imagine a future in which we will no longer believe in them and will no longer uphold them. Imagine there's no countries, and no religion too, and no possessions. Instead, he says, we could then just be living life in peace and in brotherhood, sharing all the world. Or in one sentence, all you need is love. The problem with this sweet approach, however, is that even if we could somehow make all those things disappear one day, which I doubt, it's just too likely that we, imperfect human beings, will already find something else to disagree on and fight over. And think about it. We are not really built to just love all the people all the time. Especially when the strong are exploiting and harming the weak or the environment. I don't want to love them. What I want is a functioning democratic justice system that will hold them accountable and make them stop. if we want to be serious about things like peace and justice and sustainability, then romantic and childish cliches about love and brotherhood are really not helpful. What we really need is nothing short of the framework of the democratic state, but applied on the level that includes all the parts of our global society, the global weak and the global strong together. Let me start by explaining just why the democratic state is a basic, indispensable requirement for peace and justice. It is such a necessity because it enables us to address the two basic tendencies, or you can call them defects, of our human society. First is the tendency of the strong to harm the weak, and second is the tendency of people and groups to split into mutually hostile camps. I'll discuss them in turn. The first tendency starts with a simple fact of life. Humans, either as individuals or as groups, are not equal in their power. There is always side A that is physically or otherwise stronger than side B, whether it's the grown-up and the child, the average man and the average woman, majority and minority, and so on. And whenever one side is stronger, sadly, all too often, humans tend to use their advantage for their own interests, either for their real needs or just their desires, and so we see again and again situations where the strong exploit or oppress or otherwise harm the weak. Surely not always, but way too often. And for those occasions, in order to help the weak and protect them from the strong, we have to have also a third, neutral party that is stronger than both sides and belongs to both sides, and that is the democratic state, which is built on three basic principles. A, the weak also have fundamental rights that are not dependent on things like their physical strength. B, the government of the democratic state is the only one that has the right to use violence, and only if and when it's necessary to protect its citizens. And C, in order to make sure that the government itself will not misuse its power against the people have the ultimate power over the government, through elections and a web of checks and balances and constitutional separations and limitations on the power of the government. In this way, the democratic state can be there for the weak, and in case of injustice, intervene through the courts or the police or other authorities. Furthermore, the democratic state has tools to redistribute from the financially strong to the rest of society, which is super important to maintain social justice. And now, let's move our focus to the question of peace, and see the necessary tools that democracy offers us in order to deal with the second human tendency that I mentioned. That is, the repeating tendency of people and groups to split into mutually hostile camps. And here, the democratic state has a really excellent solution. Rather than ignoring that basic tendency, or telling everyone that they should love each other all the time, democracy suggests diverse ways to channel that tendency into non-violent and even constructive forms of disagreement and group dynamics. For example, if some people have different new ideas about how society should run, democracy says, great, go ahead and start a new organization or a movement or a political party. It's really okay to disagree with other people, discuss and even argue with them, on the streets, on the media, and in the parliament. This is how we can get new and better ideas and decisions. And yes, it's really okay to even hate other people. The only thing that you are not allowed to do is use violence. That is a special prerogative of the state. So if side 1 and side 2 have a dispute that they cannot work out, they are invited to turn to the third party, the state's court, where both of them could try to explain why they are right according to the law, but it will be up to the impartial judge or the jury to decide. To sum up, democracy recognizes that the most valuable asset of humans as social creatures is their ability to interact and cooperate, split and join and change their minds, and it offers a framework for them to do so in a safe and peaceful and fair manner. And this is why it is indispensable for human society. The naive story of some anarchists who say, who needs a state? We can get along just fine without one. This story doesn't work, at least at large-scale societies. And we need to realize that today we are no longer small groups of roaming hunters and gatherers that can do as they like without any limits. With the powerful modern technologies that we have today, how people live on one side of the planet can have enormous consequences for people on the other side. And this is why, in order to have peace and justice and sustainability, we have to have that mechanism and these tools of the democratic state at the very global level, which is the level of our ecology and our economy. Sharing an all-inclusive global democracy, that is the kind of love that we really need today in the world. And that is what we need to imagine.
Okay, Rose, you need to unmute. There we
Well,
go.
that was
I think
very
it
interesting.
was short and sweet. Sorry, the playing of the video, the songs didn't quite work out.
Well, that's all right. I think we got enough to get us started with a discussion. The video, of course, as you just saw, explores the power differential between different groups, and that kind of love we need, I guess, is a love of democracy. We have the courts, of course, to deal with the less savory parts of human personalities, and the power of elections for distributing power more evenly, or that's the people's power. I think I also got out of that there's a greater need for tolerance, or there is a need for tolerance in order for this kind of democratic governance to work best. And some kind of governance is automatically required. Any kind of speech is okay. The only thing that's not allowed is violence, which will be handled by the courts, or the police, and so on. So that's what I got out of it. And I think in an ideal world that might work with a well-informed global population on civic duties, but can it now? What do the other, what does everyone else think? I'll see, there's nothing in the chat, so if you want to comment, please raise your hand.
Okay, Rose, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I can.
I don't have a hand raising thing on my anyway. The thing that strikes me is that we need to have the mechanism of the democratic state at the very global level, that mimics the state level of democracy. The interesting thing is that we have there are two things that we have to deal with, and that is the economy and the environment. So the important thing is that we have to develop an economy, or control the kind of economy that will result in social justice, which, among other things, includes a reasonable um, distribution of distribution of wealth that is compatible with the democratic majority.
Yeah, I think you're cutting out, either that or I am.
Oh,
Can everyone else hear
sorry.
me or not?
Maybe I wasn't speaking directly enough into the screen.
I heard you, Rose. Blair
go
has
ahead.
a comment in the chat.
No,
Okay, thank you. Blair, go ahead.
Am I here being heard? I don't know.
yes.
Yes,
okay.
I can hear you.
Oh, that obviously the bottom line was that the anarchy sort of proposed by the singers won't work. That was sort of the bottom line that he was saying, and you need structures, and then the question is what structure, and should it be a global democratic structure, and then there are all sorts of questions how we get there and what the constraints are. but I just got the compared with the earlier part that the long line was that anarchy does not work.
Blair, you used the word anarchy, and that kind of surprises me because the Beatles folks were not really talking about what I regard as anarchy. They were talking about love conquering everything, and all you need is love. Is love the anarchist that you're referring to,
Good
or
question.
some kind of benevolent dictator?
Yeah.
I think, and reading it, I think that Oded brought in anarchy as to sort of demonstrate um, the the right wing or um, as the right wing people in the economy or in the society who are essentially
I thought mhm. I thought the speaker began by emphasizing that human nature is such that isn't always predisposed to love. There are there's a darker side to how people behave, either individually or in groups, and that's another reason why we need uh, a particular form of um, governance. And I suppose one could say that no form of governance would result in anarchies. But it's a psychological makeup of Homo sapiens that has to be acknowledged, I think, as a need for regulation. Love alone won't do it.
Yeah, that's sort of what I heard, that love isn't enough. Uh, Democracy is the method that is promoted, and I happen to agree with. I did hear him refer to anarchy as not the way to do it, because there isn't human rights necessarily, and there isn't just settlement of arguments. And um, anyway, that's enough for
I
me.
think Blair rather mentioned or pointed to the fact that there's going to have to be specific mechanisms in terms of how we get there and which ones might take or how we get there and various steps involved and what the priorities of measures taken what priority they should be ranked as. So what are some of the most urgent things that have to be done now to facilitate the kind of democratic, um, I guess, world that
yeah.
can lead to federalism, world federalism as a form of governance? Do
So
we have to worry about AI
yeah,
or?
yeah. I could come back to the point about anarchy because the very last text in the presentation. I have the text, and I just want to read slowly a couple of lines. He ends up, the sum of democracy recognizes that the most valuable asset of humans as imperfect social creatures is their ability to interact and cooperate, to
Exactly.
split and join, and to change their minds. And he says it offers a framework for them to do it. That is, democracy offers them the framework to do it in a safe and peaceful and fair manner. So that the key thing about democracy in the state uh, is for having a peaceful resolution of disputes. And then, so this is why it's indispensable for large scale human activity within states, such as the United States and Canada. The native, and then he goes on to say the native argument of some anarchists who claim that we could get along just fine without a state is simply not true. said this might have worked for when most people lived in small groups of roving hunters and gatherers. It's not relevant for today's large scale and complex societies. Now remember, the Guy Dancy made the point that an anthropologist is that humans 300,000 years ago had societies that cooperated with each other, basically for protection. And that has been, of course, lost in modern times, except that humans have not completely forgotten about interaction and discussing differences of opinions and all of that sort of thing in democracy.
But I think it's often been said that democracy, to begin with, in a nation state, only works if there's a level of trust and there's a kind of social contract that's built up where it's a given that people are going to conduct themselves according to the rule of law or constitution that's been developed, or the Charter of Rights is the case in Canada. And one of the perennial problems in trying to promote these principles is that you've got countries that don't believe in democracy. So how do we function in that scenario?
Well, yeah, we don't. I think though. I think the point is that the what needs to happen is the development of a social contract. What he doesn't say is what is necessary to develop a social contract. The answer in simple terms is that people get together in deliberation, presumably in the town hall or the forum or whatever, and they all have different groups or different opinions on that. So they have a discussion on those differences, and then they have a realization that because they're all interdependent, they can enter into a contract where some will give up certain things in order for the whole society to give them future benefits. That is the social contract concept.
Okay, John, you have your hand up.
Yes, to the matter of what do we do when not everybody is democratic, or with countries that aren't democratic? And
Yeah,
uh, I think the video was talking about at the global level, and
yeah,
I can see that at the global level we may have a mixture of countries that are democratic, whatever exactly that means, and some that aren't quite so democratic, and some that aren't very democratic, some that they're definitely not democratic. The issue is whether there is a global structure to enforce human rights and environmental rights and things that affect everybody around the world.
yeah.
With
Because
some justice system.
You can't have a group of countries serving in the United Nations. That's not global governance. Global
So in other
governance
words, you're
the global governance is a sense is the United Nations as the government, and then the citizens around the world are discussing among themselves and coming to grips with it, with essentially a social contract run by the global governments, the United Nations. And that's why we suggest that the current United Nations take some initiative to obtain governance over the international economy. That
well in the current
we would move that. That would
world
be a form of global government.
as we see it.
And then
What
we
do we
had
do about the Board of Peace?
peace. Well, of course,
The Board of
group,
Peace.
when you have a group of people that come with a social contract, then peace is arrived at because the courts are established to ensure that everybody lives according to the contract, the rule of law.
No, I'm talking more about the alternate to the United Nations that's been currently established by the richest, most powerful, formerly democratic nation in the world.
No, that's Bomel's. That's not Bomel's point. You have a system where all of the citizens are invited to make input. There are no countries.
Well,
so
in principle, I agree with you, but
You might take all of the Chinese, for example, and have the citizens of China, as opposed to the government, uh, uh, enter into the discussions. And the same would be the citizens of all the other countries, but they would not be speaking as at the government. They would be speaking as individuals.
that's where, Peter, that's where I started to. I'm glad you clarified because the UN I don't see as a global government the way it is structured now. That's
No, it's right.
a
It's not.
community. It's a community of governments,
Yeah,
um, and the World Federalist angle on all that is we need another chamber in the House, as it were, that represents the people. We call it
yeah,
a parliamentary assembly. There are other things such as citizen assemblies that may have a role as well, but
yeah,
all of that being a voice of the people, unfiltered by the politics of whoever the dictator is in the particular country
yeah,
or the supposed democratic leader, however democratic he is. But
yeah,
at the global level, we can create a democratic structure with the prime flaw that in countries that don't hold elections because they don't believe in them, although they may be sham elections, uh, how do they appoint citizens that would be part of the parliamentary assembly? But I think there are solutions to that, that
yeah.
somehow there be some process, but I'm not sure what it
And
is.
and, and when Bomo made his presentation, he explained all of that, and I've forgotten the details.
Who are you referring to? And I see Patricia's hand there.
The Bomo, I can't remember his first name.
Yeah. Yeah.
Made a presentation to us about 2 years ago.
Yes. Bummel, Bummel.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, Andreas Bommel.
Yeah.
Yes. Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
not
of
pronouncing.
the of Democracy
Right.
Without Borders.
Right. And so they had a series of groups in different countries, but gathering a bunch of citizens together, not the government of those countries, and they were going to make their views known to the the world government.
Okay, Patricia,
Yeah, I was
you
wondering
would like to speak.
what's happened to the role of diplomacy? We don't hear much about that. It's negotiations, and one leader or his counterparts goes to the other, country or
Right.
whatever, dealing with the global conflict. But and it back and forth. But where's the word diplomacy fitting in nowadays with all these conflicts?
Well, it's my observation that diplomacy is not practiced as much as it needs to be in some of the most important places where it's needed. And one might say that would be in discussions with Iraq that led to the war that we now are saddled with. in the Middle East. So that's one area where diplomacy has been very much absent, according to the pundits on mainstream news. Um, how we go about reinstating that in a broader way that becomes an integral or stronger part of the um, collective social contract, I would say needs to we need to pay a little more attention to the ways in which morals and values are shaped. And that harkens back to some of the things I said in my own presentation about the nature of popular culture and which forms a significant component of education for young people in particular, social media and so on. The trends in terms of how we interact with each other don't augur well for an increase in tolerance and diplomacy as I see it.
One of the current issues
Any
with
other comments, disagreements?
apropos Patricia's question, we have this issue now with Trump, who is discovering that the American people are unlikely to support the use of soldiers in military interventions.
Yeah.
And ideally, the diplomats in the United States, well, first of all, the government should have approached the people as to what their views were on dealing with Iran. And secondly, if it became apparent that that the people wanted to proceed with an attempt to change Iran, they would probably opt for a system other than soldiers, or in that case, they might prefer, and then the job would be given, I presume, to the diplomats to negotiate with the other country to arrive at some kind of a settlement about the issue.
Patricia, does that clarify things for you?
It's sort of a hypothetical answer to where the diplomats would have a role.
Thank you, Peter. What I see is that, let's say, especially Trump, he goes in and dictates what he wants, what he thinks is necessary for the United States. But, there's no sitting down and negotiating. There's no, sort of efforts to reconcile the differences. It's my way or the highway. And it's disgusting. Sorry.
That's not a democracy. It's an autocrat. An autocrat in democratic
that's what we're stuck with. I mean, we can talk
autocrat.
about the theoretical, but at some point, I think we have to think about how we get from A to B. But Brian or Blair, I think you had your hand up.
I was trying to. I've been worrying about this question of inequality and how this fits into the discussion. And with diplomacy, that's how one unit in your organization deals with another unit at the international level. And then what's the problem when one of the units has greatly different power, whatever that means, than the other? How do you bring in this inherent problem of inequality? I'm not sure.
Well, that's where you need a structure that defines what is right or wrong, as the video showed with the Court of Justice, and a means of enforcing. And that right now, the UN doesn't have any means of enforcing basically because there's a veto in place that ensures that the United States or Russia or China are going to make sure that nothing happens that they don't like.
I think
So
too there
there
was
are structural
Mhm.
problems there that certainly need to be fixed. But if there was a global police force, let's call it that, or in
Yeah.
World Federalist parlance, a UN Emergency Peace Service, as it's being called, a UNEPS, then it would be known by rogue actors that there is a higher force that is going to deal with them,
Yeah.
just as we all know the police are going to deal with us if we try and rob our neighbor.
I think another deterrent to
That's all. Pardon me, Rose. That's all just kind of theoretical. How we get there is a big negotiation. um,
But
well,
coming,
Everybody agreeing that
yeah, I
it's
think
time to
there's some
change, and I don't even
yeah,
hear
there's
agreement that it's time to change yet.
there are
but there,
contradictions though in what the video speaker says. He ends by saying we need the tools of democracy, pay attention to diversity and the way discussions are held, because no two people don't all have the same views, and there has to be space for and tolerance for competing views. Speech, as he sees it, is everything is tolerated, including hate speech. The only thing that's not allowed is violence. Now, I think that's a contradiction. You cannot have a social contract in which there is room and space for diplomacy to be taken seriously, or a tolerant, loving society that looks where there's a collective inclination to look out for each other. If you're going to have popular culture that is rife with messages of hate, vitriol, vengeance, violence, and that's what we have right now. So I guess in this individual's world, the various bills that have been cropping up around the world in democratic states, Australia, the European Union, and they're at least being discussed here in Canada to put limits on hate speech and other violence inciting forms of behavior and expression. So, how do we resolve that? Or does anyone agree with me that one has to pay a little more attention to the social and cultural factors in society, and the way social media educates people in ways that are counterproductive to good democratic governance?
well, Joseph Stiglitz would agree with you. His point is that um, that giving people the freedom to hate creates a harm on other people. So that you can't have you can't have hate if you're
So when it comes to
you're running a country um, that gives people freedom. But the problem with freedom is the other aspect is that the freedom. It's often said that the freedom of the wolves is at the expense of the sheep. And Stiglitz takes this point to conclude that people have freedom as long as it doesn't harm other people. And if it harms other people, it's an unfreedom. So the two balance out. That is, they're not allowed.
That's a
I
global
would
standard,
Yes,
support.
I've been reading him too, and I agree that he makes a very strong case for the fact that in the whole spectrum of human rights, um, the one person's right to do something like spew hate speech infringes on another person's right to safety,
Yeah, that's
and
another way of putting it. Yeah,
dialogue can be closed off by that kind of
yeah.
vitriol as well. Mhm.
But coming back
Okay,
to the
John, you had
sorry,
go ahead, finish.
uh, there was
Patricia
another
has
point.
something.
Another question about equality.
Are you,
Sorry, am I on or are you on, John?
oh, go ahead. I
Well,
don't know. You
okay,
finish, Peter, and then it's John.
It was a question about equality. The thing about democracy is it's fundamentally it's about equality, uh, in the absence of power. There is the decision making is not made by people in power. It's made by all people, and by definition, there has to be an equality among all the people. Politically, as opposed to economics. Now, economics is a little different. Equality in economics is more limited. It's limited to certain limits on the degree to which there are unequal inequality in incomes and wealth and wealth. And so that
John?
the degree is something that has to be arrived at by people in deliberating in public as to what the majority believes are the limits of unequal wealth and income. But there's has to be absolute equality in terms of.
John, are you finished, Peter?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Okay, go ahead, John.
I have nothing to say, Patricia.
Oh,
Mm.
I was thinking first off, we could be looking at more efforts at reconciliation. That's something where the two opposing parties come together to try to find some kind of a mutual acceptance of circumstances. And the other thing I was wondering about, is there anything we can learn from and apply from the Aboriginal peoples about how they deal with, sort of justice, social justice, or whatever you want to call it, diploma. I don't know what the words are, but we sort of think we know so much more than other groups of people, and I think the Aboriginal people have taught us a lot of things that we've forgotten or disregarded in the past. So those are my comments.
Well, I would agree with you that we have things to learn from the Indigenous people, particularly their reverence for nature, in ways that our uh, um, evolution of government forms has tended to exclude, the emphasis on economic growth as opposed to saving the planet on an environmental level, or deal with climate change and so on. That's a very important thing that I believe that Indigenous peoples can teach us. As far as love, I don't think there's enough evidence to suggest that the Indigenous people didn't, throughout the course of their own private histories, engage in battles of one kind or another. We don't know for sure, but some of the literature suggests that it does. Us colonials, I'm not sure we can say with confidence or a certainty that completely introduced the concept of violence to them. So I go back to my original point. I think we have to pay more attention to the way in which people are educated. And today, one of the most powerful educators the world has ever known is mass media and social media. Until those components are reformed, not much is likely to change in terms of the way people interact with each other. There have been commentators that have pointed out we've got the constitutions and charters that or various declarations. Can you hear me, or am I cutting out?
No, we hear you.
Okay. They're somewhat dated. We need new forms or codes of conduct, like a declaration of digital rights is being talked about as one example. So uh, I think we've got to somehow resolve the problems we've created for ourselves without looking too hard at other nations. Certainly, we should acknowledge the fact that we've got things to learn from other peoples, but we probably have to reflect on our own uh, errors and try to do better.
What I was really referring to was the fact that when there was an issue amongst a group of Indigenous peoples, they would bring the people in that community together to, let's say, to make a sort of some kind of a decision about what that person who may have done an offense would be able to uh, accept that, you know, there are repercussions for things
Yeah.
that someone has wronged. And I'm just wondering if that kind of a thought would be workable in a greater
Yeah.
community.
Yeah, it's often pointed out that the indigenous forms of governance, perhaps not all of them, but just forgotten which ones were based on a matriarchal model rather than the kind of patriarchal model that we've ended up with, and it's very much reflected in their spiritual beliefs. Christianity is, and I guess some of the other religions like Muslim or tend to be quite patriarchal.
But Patricia, the resolution as a consequence of the discussions of the tribe or the two tribes is a very good example of deliberative democracy, because the outcome of that discussion presumably um, uh, uh, resulted in a peaceful solution to the problem. The advantage, of course, that the indigenous had is that they had no shortage of land. We have, you know, our population today, the population of the earth is double the capacity of the territory. Thousands of years ago in this part of the world, North America, there are probably, the estimates are there are only 45 million people in the entire North American continent. So they had no concept of private property territory. Um, they had no boundaries, and they, of course, developed confederations, which are a form of federalism that were quite successful. Our problem today is that we have a big mistake in giving land and facilities that which are public goods. We give it to private enterprise. We allow private citizens to own land which is inherently public, and that creates a lot of problems.
Well, land claims are certainly a controversial issue in this country today. John,
Yeah.
you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's maybe slightly different. Something the thought was triggered from earlier conversation. I've lost that thread, but it comes back to the theme here that all you need is love. I mean, a widely held principle around the world is often amongst all religious faiths is the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do to you.
Yeah.
And I think if you spoke to everybody in the world, they would all say they want peace. Oh, but that guy over there, he beat my brother up, so I want to fix that first. Um, but the fundamental belief is that there should be peace. So how do we go? And that's the John Lennon thing. All you need is love, and imagine a beautiful world. But how do we go from individuals believing in love and the golden rule and things like that, and get that standard, I'd call it, written into the world constitution, or
That's
whatever
yeah.
federalist thing we're imagining.
Well,
Well,
given the fact that we're focusing at all on the Beatles song or the other aspects of their contributions to popular culture, again brings me back to the need to examine what's happening in that aspect of our society. Let me give you an example of what I mean. At this year's Oscars, the Academy Awards in Hollywood, the movie that made best film was One Battle After Another. That's considered the ultimate gold standard of filmmaking in Hollywood this year, anyway. Now, what the producer's justification for this film? I managed to get through the first 15 minutes of it, and that was it. The rest of the car chases, the guns, the sex, the whole thing is difficult. There was absolutely no narrative that I could follow. Perhaps others could. And the justification on the part of the producer is that he made this movie for his children. He made it for his children so that they could see what a mess we've made of the world. Now, in my view, if he wanted to make a movie for his children, he might make something of the world as he would like it to be, rather than how it is. So we've constantly got this kind of dialogue going on within the pop culture section, which is incidentally a very large component in the modern economy, globally, not only in North America or in democratic countries. So that's part of the dilemma we face.
Rosa, I wonder if
Go
if
ahead.
what he was really, I wonder if what he was really saying is, I made it for my children because the 2 million that I'm getting from this film, I'm going to give to them.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's again, rather
it's just,
than
it's just a pile of
running
nonsense.
the risk of plunging his children into depression, he might. Of course.
Yeah,
well, I've been hearing this kind of nonsense from producers of violence on the screen for 30 years.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, you would think by this time nobody would.
Doug, did you want to say something?
Would be buying it.
Any other comments, Doug? I don't think he can hear. John, what's your take on the state of education as it is influenced by entertainment and popular culture? There's actually someone today I heard on CBC radio interviewed who has written a book called The Red Tsunami, who claims that China is doing a great deal to break up and impact democratic societies to make them dysfunctional in the variety of ways that we're seeing unfolding of late. And that one of the most serious aspects of this undeclared or unlimited cyber warfare, I think they call it, is TikTok as a form of social media. And what it's doing is affecting the brains of young people to the point where they're really only going to become sponges for propaganda, either from the commercial marketplace or political indoctrination of some kind. What do we say to the way in which young people are being influenced by digital material? Because this augurs one way or
Don't get that.
another for the future.
That's certainly a good topic for another day.
I think so. And we probably have overstepped our time, and I think I'll turn things over to John so he can ask the final question and we can begin to wrap up.
Okay, well, thank you, Rose, for trying to herd cats here. Oh, does Blair have a comment? No, I thought I saw him raising his hand, but you're muted, Blair. Hope you can unmute.
Yeah, I very much agree with the discussion, but at the moment I feel so preoccupied with how we contain individuals and their surroundings, namely two. One is the president of the United States, and the other is the head of Russia, Putin. It's that the issues that they are bringing to the table at the moment seem so overwhelming that it's hard to focus on some of the others.
Yeah.
I guess that comes down to the global governance system that will control them. But I acknowledge we're not perfect at controlling people within our own country perfectly, but a whole lot better than things are managed at the global level, in that we have courts and police. So how we
Not
get to
that,
having
yeah,
courts and police and public forums for discussion of ideas that are reasonable. Well, that's the question that I wanted to put at the end here, because the Toronto branch always asks at the end of any meeting, well, is there some message that we should be taking back to the Toronto board here about what we should be trying to do as World Federalists in Canada, specifically in Toronto, but anywhere? Is there an action item here? Of course, we're going to fix
Well,
everything tomorrow, and there are many things that need to be done. And we have run many different sessions on the evils of the world and possible things that might be done. But is there something that jumps out at us now
I think we just
as
need to
discussion
keep doing what we're
allowed?
doing. I think what the Toronto branch has done is getting us to think more and more about some of these global issues, and to find some of the branches, including the Montreal branch, to perhaps host one or two of these events, but taking a particular topic and developing some kind of a theme for one of these Zoom meetings.
I Well, I have a suggestion, John. Maybe we could also emphasize the need for an update or a more contemporary definition of a code on human rights, and particularly in light of digital influences. I think that's come out in
Interesting.
some of the reports, like the Pact for the Future and so on, deliberations the UN is already having.
Okay, two thoughts here. One, I hear Patricia suggesting discussions like this are relevant, but it's a bit of a preaching to the choir amongst us. And my concern is getting the thinking out to the broad community, and
Yeah, like the
social media.
university. Yeah.
Um, the other was Rose's. What was your last point you just made? Sorry, I forgot.
Well, I think if we were to take, um, I suppose, one thought or suggestion out of this discussion, we might emphasize the need to update some of our codes of conduct to more robustly address the impact of digital technologies and where they're taking us. I don't know if that makes sense.
I know you're focused on digital technologies and all the ills. I agree with those, but you did mention the human rights and
Well,
whether
they're
they,
interrelated.
yeah.
Human rights
So,
include
but I think you
printed.
were suggesting we need to understand Declaration of Human Rights and update it maybe. And maybe we should have a
Yes, you
session
can put it that way. And we
on the
need an
Declaration of Human
update to
Rights and
a
adding
Declaration of
things
Human
to it.
Rights.
Okay, so I hear the point. Let's
A
move
Declaration
on.
of Human Rights and some clarification on or updating to acknowledge the impact of digital technologies on all of our rights.
So picking up on Patricia's point, maybe we should have a discussion about the Declaration of Human Rights and what is needed to update it, and
Yeah, yeah, that's
how we write love into it, in John Lennon's words.
we could.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's one recommendation you can take out of this meeting.
Is there anything else? Okay, the
Oh.
event has been recorded, as you've
Yeah.
noticed and approved, and the recording will be sent out to everybody who is registered shortly after we prune off intro stuff and some of the problems we had at the beginning. We've run a number of events like this, some of them involving videos, some of them involving down-home speakers or internationally known speakers. And I've put in the chat a link to where you can find those on the WFM Canada website. I call it Toronto Events. One of the more the major, let's call it a major thing. Oops, what happened here? We lost something. Did we lose Patricia? No, we didn't. A major project of the World Federalists right now is trying to inspire some action on the key problem in the Security Council with the vetoes that are abused, the veto right that 5 countries have: Russia, China, UK, France, and the United States. Their abuse of the veto is a fundamental thing that gets in the way of maintaining the peace, and World Federalist Movement is trying hard to get the Canadian government to press for International Court of Justice ruling on the limitations to the use of the veto. So that's a major thing that's going on, and there's a within the World Federalist Movement, and we ran an event about a year ago on the Security Council problems, and I just put in the chat a link to the recording of that event. And also in the chat is a link to how to support World Federalist Movement Canada by becoming a member or making a donation. So we hope you'll consider all that if you aren't already, because we can't continue doing what we're doing if we don't have
Right.
the support of the community. So thank you for your participation today.
Thank
you,
you,
Rose, for
Okay. Thank you,
organizing,
John.
and
Peter, and
Peter
everybody
for
else.
introducing.
Yeah.
And everybody for their
Thank
contribution.
you.
Thank you.
And you'll be seeing the recording sent to you in a few days.
Very good. Well, thank you, John.